Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions. And here with me today to help wake the world up to what's possible for healing are some of the authors of a new book that we have coming out. This one is called The Caregivers Advocate, a complete guide to support and resources. Debbie DeMoss Compton is our lead author of this amazing collaboration. Debbie, thank you so much for your big mission and vision with caregiving, for this topic, for bringing together this stellar group of expert authors. This book is so needed. And these authors just poured their hearts and souls into their stories and are dropping some practical, effective tools for caregivers and to help the people that they're caring for. So I'm so excited, and Debbie deserves a huge thank you. So I have a few amazing people in this Zoom room with me today with over 15 years of experience as a life empowerment coach, Reiki master, and death doula. Diane Marie Gallant helps her clients and their families to navigate the unexpected twists and turns of caregiving so they can mindfully experience the sacredness of the end of life journey. I have Dr. Karen Shooter with me. She's a resilience expert who helps caregivers promote effective caregiving and personal wellness. Kathleen Plummer Gordon is here. She's an advocate for seniors and family members as a medical social worker. And Michelle Briggs is an integrative psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner who specializes in caring for the caregiver. We have some pretty amazing people here today to help you with this topic, you guys. Diane, you're going to start the party off today. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thank you, Laura. I wrote chapter 14, Finding the Gift, When Caregiving Has No End in Sight. And what I wanted to show is the quote by Lena Horne really sums it up beautifully for me. It says, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it." So when I found that quote when I was researching the book, it just stopped me in my tracks because it just summarized my experience. Starting out enthusiastic in the beginning, tending to my mother lovingly and my father, thinking it was going to be a short-term experience because they both had dire medical diagnoses. And then after my dad passed, and then looking at my mother thriving after, 2.5, 3 years in, I had to shift because I saw this is not a short-term commitment. This is settling turned into a long-term commitment. And the amount that I was running and invested, it was unsustainable. So my chapter just covers how to be able to thrive, and it is about finding the gift. It's about the reframe within the situation, because you always have to care for yourself. We have to keep our cup overflowing, or we just won't have anything healthy to even offer to another person. You can quickly get into resentment or blame, feeling burdened, and that is not loving caregiving. So my chapter shows my personal story, how I got there to be.
I love the quote too. I agree. It's a great quote. The way that you carry the load. How did you learn to carry the load differently to help yourself?
I needed to pause. I needed to zoom out and have a higher vision and stop looking at the minutia. So when I was able to zoom out and through inquiry, first having self-compassion for myself and my mom, the whole situation, in the self-inquiry, what did I need? And I realized it was almost like the early days when I'm home raising children, because you are tied to the house. But I also have this other piece that I need to go ahead in life, because when my caregiving began for my parents, it was 4 days after I separated from a long marriage. So I still am looking ahead to my future, which will come one day. So I needed to be wise about, I couldn't just wait anymore. I was like in a waiting game. So I needed to just flip that and say, okay, how can I use this time to advance myself? So I've been continuing my education, and it gives me enthusiasm. That was my answer.
Enthusiasm is big, badass energy. I like it.
Yeah.
I like the energy of enthusiasm, and it's very difficult to feel that, to curate that in the middle of the things you just told us you were in the middle of. If you told us one thing that you did to flip the switch to enthusiasm, could you think of one?
Yes, it's number one, have a good support system around you, people who really will prop you up. You don't need anybody to mirror struggles. That doesn't help. You want somebody positive there that can help you with a broader vision. And what was shared with me, which was extremely helpful, was find the freedoms you have because we
Mm.
all have freedoms. So if I have 10 minutes and I can sit outside in nature for 10 minutes, use it wisely, treat it as a respite, be exquisitely present, and just, be. So again, it's really changing my expectations and not looking backwards what I used to have. It's like, what do I have now that can help enrich me and help me continue to grow as an individual? So once again, I could be the best caregiver too, without resentment.
Diane, thank you. Thank you so much for saying yes to this project, and thanks for being here today.
My pleasure and honor. Thank you, Laura.
Find the freedoms you do have. Ooh, you guys are going to hear so many amazing nuggets today. I think we already dropped two or three with just talking to Diane. So get ready. Karen, tell us about your amazing chapter.
I wrote chapter 5, which is promote healthy boundaries to thrive, create balance for resilient and sustainable caregiving. As a natural lifelong caregiver, I've been searching how to make it sustainable, whether it was helping severely handicapped children or helping women escape abusive relationships. And I remember, especially when I was working with families who have lost a loved one and thinking about what do I need to be feeling? How do I need their need to feel exactly what they're feeling? But that was not sustainable nor helpful. And so I learned about healthy boundaries, especially emotional boundaries. And I discovered, especially when we were supporting my mother-in-law who died from Alzheimer's and went through some really challenging times, the value of healthy boundaries. And oftentimes we think of boundaries as being rude or as being selfish, but they're really not. And boundaries are basically limits, helping us understand what we are and are not responsible for. So I am passionate about helping people who are in caregiving roles, personal and professional, because our world needs caregiving. Our world needs healthy caregivers. I know how meaningful it is, but I also know how incredibly challenging and exhausting it can be.
Oh my gosh, there's so much here that I want to ask you about. I'm like taking a couple of notes here. Our world doesn't just need caregivers, it needs healthy caregivers. What a nugget. Okay. But I'm going to rewind to boundaries because honestly, the boundaries conversation, we need to have it more often so people can understand that it's not rude or selfish, it's necessary. Could you go there just a little bit more on that one? Like, this is so important.
Yeah, healthy boundaries really are beneficial for everyone involved. Um, a lot of us caregivers are perfectly willing to give up a lot of ourselves to the point where we give up too much of ourselves. But healthy boundaries actually, they're acknowledging our humanity, they're acknowledging our limits of what we can do or even should try to do. And healthy limits not only promote caregiver wellness and balance, but promote more sustainable relationships.
So I am thinking of a couple of personal moments, and in the moment of setting the boundary verbally with a family member, and we could be talking about inner circle, family members, friend, anyone. We could be talking about anyone, and they don't have to have any problems like dementia or all right. This
Mhm.
is healthy boundaries mean a lot of things, but in the personal example, it's like, whoa, I feel this horrible feeling inside, but I am going to say this out loud, because if I don't set this boundary for myself, uh I can even feel the problem in my body. I talk about body awareness a lot, like to understand what that is. But we have to be able to do it anyway with that feeling, Karen. Like, oh, that terrible feeling, right? Like, how do you want to help us?
Right. So a
Mhm.
part of what is helpful is to wisely discern boundaries ahead of time and to be able to even coach ourselves through, here's maybe some ways I can talk about this. One of the challenges in our world is that there's a lot of people and a lot of organizations don't have a healthy understanding of boundaries and the need for healthy boundaries. And so it does take courage, it does take persistence, but we can start with understanding the importance of healthy boundaries. And when it comes to emotional boundaries, it's, what am I supposed to feel? Am I supposed to feel what you're feeling, Laura, if I'm helping you? That's a simple example of a boundary. And if we have a healthy boundary, it's no. You have your emotional journey, I have mine, and I can allow you to experience your emotions without taking them on myself. And that way I can be a healthier presence in your life and also enjoy the joys and the simple joys in my own life while walking with people who are having a really hard time.
Yes, brilliant. Karen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for saying yes to this project. You can have your emotions, but I don't have to take them on. And when I set that boundary, I am a better caregiver. I'm just repeating what Karen just said. So, so important. Kathleen, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Laura, thank you. So my chapter is chapter 7, which is titled Safety. When is it time to stop driving? And honestly, Laura, when I was approached by Debbie about participating in this project, I thought she was going to ask me to write about something else. And she said, well, it'd be really helpful if I could have someone write about when is it time to stop driving? And we need to have a story and this. And as soon as she said that, I knew it was meant for me because of my family story. And then also because of so many people that I've run into where they tell me situations. Example, oh, my grandma is drive, she's 92 and she's driving, but it's okay because she doesn't drive when the kids are going to school. She waits until the school bus is gone and she only goes to the grocery store and it's only this and only that. And as I'm hearing these stories, it reminded me and just really confirmed how important it is for us to have these conversations with our elderly loved ones about transportation. It's such a major part of our life, and yet it seems like so much we take for granted. Oh, I'm helping mom. I'm going to go to this for her. I'll check on her. She's okay. Or I talked to another person and they'll say, she's telling me about her husband and how she's concerned. He's so angry. And then he gets in the car and I'm, red flags going. And I'm thinking, oh, please tell me that he's not driving. He's okay. He just put a little dent in the garage door last week. And so many of these. And kind of reminds me a little bit, I want to piggyback a little on what Karen said about the boundaries, because I think it's really difficult for a lot of people to have that conversation. Who wants to look forward to that conversation to say, mom or dad, I'm really worried about your driving. Can you just stop driving? I'll drive for you. And there's different ways to have that conversation and to make it in a more supportive way and not so much a threatening kind of manner. And I think that that's something that we really need to have more often. And I think it could help a lot of families.
It's such an important topic and such a tough one because driving is such independence for people. I remember we had my great aunt Barbara, and she lived till she was 94. And that car of hers sat in the parking lot the last few years of her life because she wasn't going to sell it. Right. And it very quickly got to the point where that wasn't safe. And it wasn't happening, but yet we weren't going to sell the car yet because, that was just such a symbol of independence. Like, I can do this. And I love what you said about having the conversations ahead of time, but wow, you're right. Nobody wants to sign up for that conversation. How could you give us a tip for starting it?
Sure. So, like a lot of things in later in life, it helps to plan. So the best time is to have that conversation when your parents are still very healthy. Have the conversation when your parents are in their 60s or 70s and still very independent and healthy. And start asking them, hey, mom, dad, have you thought about what life might be like later on when you're physically not able to get around? Would you like, if you're able, would you like me to do some driving? Would you like me to start checking out options for you? I know there are some resources in the community, and just kind of get a feel for how they react to that topic. And that'll give you a good idea of where they are and how open they are. And sometimes that in itself is just it's a new stage in a relationship. It's a new stage for the parent. It's a new stage for the adult child to have that conversation.
I love it. That's brilliant. I'm thinking about a couple people in my life and we're open about all the other topics anyway. We have talked about death and estate planning and all the different kinds of things. So this is perfect to also come in with, hey, what about that car? And what are you thinking about that stage of life? Kathleen, thank you so much for what you're doing in the world. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Laura.
Michelle, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Sure. So I wrote, chapter 18, Love's Resilience and Hope, Navigating Marriage After Stroke and Aphasia. And I was inspired by this chapter for many reasons. I've been a caregiver my whole life. And after a year and a half of marriage, my husband had a major stroke. And he also had the part of the stroke, which was aphasia, where you can't communicate. And you also don't know how much that person is receiving in communication. So it really complicated the caregiving for him. And so I wrote the chapter to inspire other folks. A lot of folks experience stroke in a marriage and how to navigate that. And then the extra piece of the aphasia was really important for me to get out into the world. Being a survivor of stroke with him and taking care of him and getting the resources to take care of him. And also we were lucky that we have an organization here in the Maryland that supports folks with aphasia. So that was really important gift to us in our marriage as we navigated that.
Sorry, I was taking a sip there. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to back up to communication because I think this is really important for people to understand. But I also want to say that in our interviews and in this book, we are talking a lot about Alzheimer's, dementia, and the elderly. However, when I think about this book and caretaking, there are so many other ways we take care of people. And Michelle's story is one of them. But also as a parent, we take care every single day of that whole time that we're parents to our children. We care about our pets. We take care of a lot of things, right? And people. So when I think about your story, Michelle, especially back to the communication piece, were you able to devise other ways of communicating that worked for you right away? Was that a huge struggle? How did that go for you?
It was a huge struggle because in this situation with stroke, not only you might be dealing with loss of mobility and helping that person to rehab. But when you're unable to communicate with each other to understand what that person's wants and needs are in their own life, you become an absolute advocate and for us, it was immediate. It wasn't the slow decline of Alzheimer's or dementia. So I was really out on a limb. And, I knew him so well that I could communicate or understand eye rolling and things like that. But it was really a struggle throughout the years. And also, it added to frustration in the family unit and so I really had to take care of myself, and I encourage a lot of other caregivers for folks with aphasia to really take your time and be patient with yourself, be patient with that person as they try to express themselves. And I certainly learned a lot of patience over the years, but also to forgive yourself when you have that human moment and you're both just so frustrated and you can't get it, you just can't figure it out. And you may lose it and you may get emotionally dysregulated. And to be able to forgive yourself and, just love and understand that that's going to happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but I was able to learn that lesson too.
A really big, important one that's come up in all of our interviews so far in terms of that self-care, self-compassion, our full-time caregivers um, to our family who have significant issues, our other level patient. You have
Mhm.
either built it or not.
Mhm.
We're either losing it on a daily basis or we're really practicing and getting better at it, right? But I think all of you have mastered a certain level of that patience, and that is a gift. I believe it's a gift. Little things don't bug you so much anymore, right? It's all perspective. Would you agree, Michelle?
Yeah, I would. And,
Mhm.
it just comes to me that, when I was rearing children, if mama's not happy, the kids aren't happy. So it just works all over the place. When, if I wasn't happy and taking care of my needs and fulfilling my desires, then my husband wasn't going to be happy either.
Yeah,
So
we
take
hear
care of
that a
yourself.
lot. Yes, and we hear it a lot, don't we? The oxygen mask first
Hmm.
to us, but uh, I think it just bears repeating so that we can remember that has to come first. Michelle, thank you so much for saying yes to this and for being here to share.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get into it with the next question. Karen, I know there's 100 things, but if you had to say what you think is the most important thing you want people to know about caregiving, what would it be?
It would be that their well-being is every bit as important as the person or the people that they are helping and taking care of. And
Nice.
it's not selfish to take care of themselves. They actually can, I mean, it's vital to being an effective caregiver. So using resources, talking about what's hard, putting into place boundaries, taking time to do things, whether it's walking the dog, reading a book, going on a vacation. They're every bit as important as the manual day to day, what they do to help others. And that when it comes to being around a lot of heavy emotions and suffering, um, it is good to let go of what's not ours to carry. And we can also allow ourselves to experience joy, to experience the fun things in life. Sometimes when we're caught up with suffering, we think we should not be able to experience joy. They coexist in our world. So allow yourself to experience joy.
I love it. Thank you, Karen, for that. You're reminding me of we have a project going, and one of our authors talked about survivor's guilt. And this reminds me of that as like, okay, well, I can't be happy, I can't thrive, I can't feel the joy. Oh, you need to. We are counting on you to feel that, right? So that you can be the best caregiver you can be. Okay, Kathleen, how about you? What's the one most important thing about caregiving that you want people to understand?
I think when it comes to the subject that I wrote about, the driving, is to really listen to your gut. And if your gut is telling you something is just not right here, you know it's time to have a conversation, and you need to approach your elderly loved one and let that person know about what your concerns are for their safety, for everyone's safety when it comes to driving. And if you know that that conversation is going to be too hard to do on your own, by all means, invite another family member, a friend, or professional, whoever you need to have that conversation, and you will be so much happier with that. Better safe than sorry.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, on that one. Yeah, this is, we talked about it a few minutes ago when you were speaking about your chapter, but it'll probably be one of the hardest things you have to talk about, but that doesn't mean you get to procrastinate because
Does
this
not
is
pay.
correct. Safe or sorry, like we're going to stay safe here. And so we have to be brave to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kathleen. Michelle, what's the one thing you want people to know? What's the most important about caregiving?
Well, I'm going to advocate for seeking professional support, and maintaining social connections. You know, these when you're caregiving, and especially in my situation where it's even more complicated with the aphasia piece, you really need to be with other people. You need to help each other in that and find like-minded people that are experiencing the same level of stress that you may be. And so we had a support group for spouses of folks with aphasia. So that was really important. And then stay socially connected. It can be very isolating taking care of someone. You are homebound for a lot of us can't afford that care. So you're homebound and taking care of your loved ones. So try to connect somehow. And in this day and age of digital, it's really was really helpful for me to be able to connect with family, friends, and stay connected. It's really important.
Really important. I know how beautiful it is to be with all of you on Zoom as an example, authors all over the world. And so it's a matter of reaching out and finding those groups and chatting with other people and actually carving out the time on your calendar. That is part of your self-care, is the connection. And I think I love that. Thank you, Michelle. Diane, how about you on this one? What's that one most important thing?
Well, for me personally, since my caregiving is a solo journey between me and my mom, it's being aware of my energy and what I can do to keep it up. Because I have to stay in a state of being restored if I'm going to have the energy to give to mom. So I like to check in with my own state of being. And if you break it down simply, it's could come down to two questions. Does my mother need help, or do I need help? And a lot of times it is, I do need help. And my greatest thing is just trying to be present and trying to be still, trying to come to this part where I can still feel me. And it is hard to find that when you are caregiving full time. So nature really is my respite. Anything I can do outside really saves me. But I just want to repeat to what Michelle said, but socially too, because that's the thing that really cut me off hard also, because this was also through the COVID years too. And then being a full-time caregiver, for me, sometimes it can feel like I'm still in extension of the COVID years. Because unless I find a sitter, then, caregiver for mom, then I'm home. So, it's that, tightrope. It's a balancing act. But it, again, like others have said, it's not selfish to care for ourselves. We have to, it's essential, because if anything happens to me, then what's going to happen to mom? So it's like global care. Caregiving's for everyone, including ourselves.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One thing COVID did for everybody is give us perspective on what some people's lives were already like before, right? And it's a very small box that feels like it's getting smaller when you're isolated. So just coming back to, Michelle's point about connection, I think again, yeah, it's worth repeating.
And I
So
just, something I'm mindful of and inspired by what Diane and Michelle have talked about is that a lot of caregivers, for some reason, we think that we have to be strong and perfect and do it all on our own. And I think a lot of us need to really struggle with, but get to the point to allow ourselves to ask for help and to allow ourselves to be honest about our struggles with those social connections that can be safe and supportive.
yes. Wow. I think that, first of all, perfectionism is going to paralyze anybody, no matter what we're talking about. But I just don't think caregiving can ever be perfect. In fact, I think it pulls out your most vulnerable moments ever. So, like, if we know this, then we can be gentle with ourselves and reach out, you know? So, yes.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
So I just wanted to say, I think, with the caregiving, it really highlights for all of us that need for the connection in whatever that situation is for that day, whether it's the conversation about, did you take your meds? Are you watching? Somebody to care for mom, or the conversation about driving. And all of this, it kind of brings to light for me and the need that we all have for that connection through that caregiving process, and how much benefit it is for us as caregivers, as well as the family members or the elderly loved ones who we're caring for.
Yes, most definitely. Gosh, you brought up something that gave me a moment about, have you taken your meds yet? All right, I'm just going to say it out loud. Like, caring for somebody who maybe isn't even in an end stage or disease stage, but who has 15 meds. My dad was that, and assisting that, looking at the situation for the very first time from the outside, where the mix of meds was creating a problem, and the doctors weren't talking. God, don't get me started on this, right? Like, so having the advocates, and you are all those people who are saying, hey, we need to advocate for our friends and our family and our people that we love. And when we see that situation and we know it's wrong and we know it's creating problems, we may have to march into the doctor's office with them and say, hey, here's the 15 bottles. Let's sort this out. Right. Because I think it gets out of control. And again, like this one just, wow, this one gets me every time when I see it. Okay. So Kathleen, I'm going to stick with you for this next one. And it's an interesting question. I'm curious to see how you'll answer it. But a lot of people in our healer community talk about the fact that everything happens for us, not to us. Has this idea helped you? Why or why not? Everything in life happens for us, not to us.
Well, I would say in the situation specifically for my chapter with safety, yes. And that is, I decided after going through this situation with my dad, with our family, that it was so tough. And I decided that if there was ever an opportunity for me to help another family to avoid this kind of a horrible situation, that I would speak up and I would do that. And so that is kind of my passion in this. Yeah, so in that sense, yes, this happened for us, for our family, for, I can say, for that reason.
I like how you kicked that question off. It's not an easy one. Michelle, how about you? So everything happens for us, not to us. Is that helped or not?
When you take an attitude shift, you know, from victim to, okay, what's the lesson in this? I think absolutely. You know, for me, I'm able to, um, and others that I've heard say things like, wow, you know, I learned how to be more patient. I learned how to live in the day. You know, definitely there's growth that comes from these situations. And, you know, I'm really grateful, and I've heard a lot of folks be grateful as they come out of it and say, yeah, there's a greater meaning here, and grasping that, and then sharing their experience, strength, and hope with others is another um, beautiful thing, you know, to experience the love and understanding, and to be able to support and share your story with someone else and see how you inspire them. And that's been a gift as well.
Yeah, you said it when you said, it's the attitude you adopt, it's your mindset practice. And you are all other level warriors when it comes to that. Honestly, that's my belief. And everyone in this book, you're all in that practice. And it's why I like to hear the answers to this question. Diane, how about you? What's your addition to this? Everything happens for us, not to us. Has that helped you?
Yes, I believe that's the transformation that I went through, because the first 2 years, I think often we start out with nobility, like we have a noble pursuit that we're here fulfilling this role. Can become a mission. But then when, again, when there was no end in sight, then I was attaching to the victimhood, feeling trapped, feeling burdened, feeling like my life was interrupted. And there's truth to that, but you don't need to engage it and hold it and define yourself by it. So shifting and finding the gift, like what can I do amongst this opportunity that's going to help me grow as a person? So I see it. My mother gave me the gift of time. She slowed me down, and I had to do something with it so I could keep playing victim, or I could find ways to have positive steps that are going to help me grow as a person. And again, that full loop, anything I do to help me helps her. So that's how I see it, Laura.
Yeah, I love it. I love listening to all of you talk about this.
Yeah.
Karen, how about you?
I love the thinking that we're not victims and that we can be proactive and learn from our experiences. It's a statement that I struggle with at some level, and it's, I think, thinking about the people, the situations that I've been exposed to, the family whose young adult son committed suicide, the woman who is abused in Honduras to the point where she is almost killed, and the child who is abandoned on the streets. There's just and a lot of times different folks will justify what happens and saying they'll bring it back to faith. It's to make us stronger, and I think it's just one of those things we really have to struggle with, the brokenness in our world. It's not such an easy answer always to how do we justify or how do we understand what's happened. So I can see the value of a perspective of learning and moving forward. But I think it's not always so easy to be able to switch that mindset.
Yeah, I fully appreciate the way that you're answering this question as well. And I struggle with similar thoughts about that brokenness. And I think I want to sum it up with my practice that goes something like, with awareness, we have a choice and we can react or respond. And so if we're in response, to me, that feels good, better. And even if it's a 1% better than the reaction thing. And I really appreciate all of you answering that question. It's tough. This is a tough one. Um, and yeah, you guys are amazing. So last question, Michelle.
Mhm.
Michelle, you actually were the first one to touch on this, maybe, but we've all talked about this, and we've talked about community and connection. And so for me, the community that has been the difference between success and failure in many instances. And I'm not talking about business success here. I'm talking about personal thriving, community, that connection. So tell me a little more about your community and what that's meant to you. And just speaking to our listeners today about reaching out. Maybe they're afraid to reach out, or they feel like they have no community, right? What would you tell them?
So first, I would say embrace your fear. Know that it's going to be there, and that if you want those feelings of discomfort and uncertainty to dissipate, then it's time to reach out. And for me, it started with nuclear family, people that I could trust within my family, and then it extended off to the friends that really sat no judgment. They didn't give me advice when I didn't ask for it. That they just were loving witnesses to my process. And those were the folks that I felt the safest with. So, and then beyond that, it was to the medical community. Navigating the medical system was important. Being a nurse, I trusted the nurses uh, to give me the real deal. What really am I to expect here? And the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist. That we had a whole team, and then eventually it was the support group uh, when I felt the most vulnerable and felt that I would begin to judge myself and wanted to really just see if everybody else was having the same experience I was. And it was spot on. Everybody had the same stories, they had the same ideas, and we really supported each other and cared for each other. And a lot of laughing went on. Even in tragedy, you can laugh, and that's definitely healing.
Yeah, Karen talked about that earlier too, about the joy. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to
Mhm.
express joy. Um, I love how you are talking about the different kinds of these communities, and there's different purposes for the different kinds. I love how you kicked that off. Diane, community, what has it meant to you?
Well, how I get my community is I always wanted to dance. I had a grandmother that did Charleston. So 2 years into my caregiving duties with my parents before COVID, I signed up for a Lindy Hop swing dance class, and I'm still dancing since then. There's the brief pause with COVID and it's back, but that's another social circle for me that's been family in the sense they have been here with my brand new life. We don't have a former history, so they can really support me where I am right now. And that's just really been a wonderful thing for me, but also the movement, because movement moves energy. So to be able to have that and look forward to it, and the music is so uplifting. It's like my playground time. I always think of swing dancing as when you're in elementary school and the recess bell rings and you just go running outside. So that's my bright light, is to have that right now. And then also, always open to new friendships, new connections. I have done some travel. And we'll put mom in respite for a week. That was really hard to do the first time. I cried all the way leaving her. I felt so guilty. But then after, when I realized how I felt, it was just very sustaining. So I try to do these things for myself again, and to keep my inner child at play. That really helps to lift me too.
I love that reminder. I love it because the dance family, they become a family, right? Community, I think, can lead to the feeling of family. It's so powerful. But I really also love that you went on vacation, that you did that super hard thing and you were brave enough and you did it for you because you come back refreshed. You come back new for the person and full, so that you can give from a little bit more of an overflow than versus your reserves. I think it's important. Karen, what about community for you?
But I've experienced and have seen a lot of times where caregivers, we tend to isolate ourselves if we're really struggling. There's also a lot of loneliness, and we feel like we're the only ones dealing with something. But caregiving is really a collective experience, and it should be, because how we treat ourselves, how we treat others affects everybody else around us in more ways than we can understand. And I've found that when I grow or expand my understanding of community, there's a lot of power in that. And for my book and my work in Honduras, and I've talked with more than 50 people in helping roles around the world, we share a lot of common ground. It crosses professional realms, it crosses national borders, global borders. Caregivers share a lot of common ground around the world, and in that, we can not only find affirmation, but also support and increase the support that we give to each other.
I love how you just made the world smaller for all of us in a good way. Like, just like, oh yeah, it's not just right here in this house or this neighborhood or this community, that vision, the literal visual just changed for me. I love it. All right, Kathleen, you're going to wrap us up today. Tell us what your 2 cents are about the community piece. What has that meant to you?
So for me, the community, I feel like I have been really blessed with a large, loving family. And I say that, and that's huge because I think there's this assumption sometimes, we experienced it when my mother was passing. We had her hospice at home, and one of the nurses came in and said, you're such a large family here. I just need you all to know that at the moment your mother passes, she's going to be the one in charge. And so if it's you get up and leave the room and you come back and she's already passed, don't be so surprised. And I just kind of let that go. And I thought, lady, you do not know my mother. And at the moment my mother passed, it was all 10 of us and all the in-laws and the children, the grandchildren spilling out into the hallway when she passed. And I'm thinking that's the way my mother would have wanted it. But getting community, for me, it is family. It is also something that I've learned through this process. It's networking. And that networking is totally different than my family kind of network. And it's taught me a lot. It's really taught me to reach out and to connect and ask and grow with people who may be totally different from me, and yet they're experiencing some of the things that I'm experiencing. And it's been a wonderful process. Wonderful.
Yes, which does exactly what I was saying when I said the vision of that Karen gave me. It's like all of a sudden the little fingers on the planet are more and they're reaching everywhere. And, it's a really kind of goosebumpy feeling. Thank you for bringing that piece up because, it's a topic I love with our collaborations. So this is a great, great way to wrap up today. And I want to thank all 4 of you for putting your hearts and souls onto these pages and your stories, but also stepping up with master teachings, things that people can put into practical use when they read your chapter. And it's one thing to teach it, you do it every day, but to put it in black and white in a book in a way that a person can really, make use of it is a skill. And you all did it brilliantly. So, to our listeners today, this is way more than a book. This is a very generous community. So scroll down into our show notes today. I have everybody here hooked up with their websites, their links for you. Go explore what they're up to. And you may have gotten the little goosebumps today with something someone said, or maybe you have a question, or you just need to get some support for wherever you are on the journey. They're there for you and ready to answer those questions and give you that support. I'm so proud of that piece of the networking and the community that we're building around here at Brave Healer Productions. And thanks to all 4 of you for being a part of that. So you're all also invited to our book launch party. It's going to be a Zoom on July 8th, and I'm going to gather with all of our caregivers, advocate authors. We're going to have so much fun celebrating the book and learning about them. And we'll have some fun giveaways and stuff that we're doing that day. So drop down into the notes. I've got some info and a link for you. And if you happen to be listening to this interview anytime after that July date, well, then just hop over to Amazon, because that means our book is live and well, and you can get your copy. Lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. It is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.